Hello, welcome to the Wool Wider podcast. My name is Frances and I'm coming to you from Cornwall. Today I'm going to share with you the journey to finish my Daft Days cardigan, including the sweater surgery that I needed to do to rectify my mistake. I'm going to update you on the progress on my works in progress and have a discussion about some cast-on ideas I have. The weather outside today is looking beautiful. My window here looks out over the bay in Cornwall, and today we went out for a walk, as we usually do, just after sunrise on the beach. And when we got back and I was looking out the window, I saw a large pod of dolphins, probably at least 40, swimming along the outskirts of the bay. And their bodies were being picked out by the sun, so they were glistening and making them really easy to see. And it was a real spectacle to watch. Anyway, let's get into the knitting. I have got on the Daft Days cardigan, and it is finished, and I have blocked it. It is made up of West Yorkshire, the main colour, the blue colour here is West Yorkshire Spinner's Fleece, and the yarn is the Advent is from Blue Fern Yarns. They're both double knitting. It's from Blue Fern Yarns, the Advent that Shannon did for Christmas 23, so the Christmas just gone. I cast this on I think December the 6th, and so I've made quite good progress on it, considering, and I'll tell you about some of the things that I've done, and there's been quite a bit of extra work. It's not just been a straightforward knit. So I've blocked it. It's come out well on the blocking. It has softened from the blocking. Not that it was particularly rough anyway, particularly Advent calendar is very soft, but it's softened more, and so the whole garment feels a bit more relaxed to wear, which is really nice. That's the purpose that it's going to fulfill the purpose that I wanted it to fulfill. So I've knitted the body up as per the pattern. When I've got to just below the armholes, I've started to decrease to create a V-neck, and I have then, as I've got to the armholes, I have then brought the depth of the armhole, or the depth, that's the depth, isn't it? I've then brought in the armholes this way, and that's because, so I brought it down from a size 4 to a size 2 here, and that is because I'm more of a size 2 on the top of the shoulders, and 4 on the bust. So I've done that. So that's then brought that in. So then when I picked up the stitches for the armholes, I've then created some short row shaping here. So I've done a line in the main colour all the way round. And then as I've started to bring in that first colour from the Advent, you can see that it just comes down to about here, and then I've gone back round, and each time I've picked up 4 stitches more. The details of how I've done that, how I've done the V, you will now find on my Ravelry page, and I'll put my Ravelry name up there so that you can find me easily if you would like those details down in black and white for you. So did the sleeve, and I realised quite early on, and I remember wondering about it really quite early on. The body, and I'll show you some pictures of it, the body, the first, I think it was stripe 1 and stripe 4, had somehow got swapped round the wrong way, probably because 6th of December I had 6 colours there, and they are 2 fairly similar colours, but I feel one had got more grey in, and I put them round the wrong way. So I decided to do some sweater surgery, and cut just above where I had gone wrong. I'd also done a 6 row line of the main colour at one point instead of 4, and that to me felt very notable. It kind of made the repetition of the pattern look wrong. So although it was only 2 rows, it really stood out to me. So I decided that I would change both of those. So I put in a safety line, which for me was putting in a knitting needle, picking up the first leg of the V, of each stitch as I went along. So I did that, and then I cut below. I unraveled down to the ribbing, added a little bit more of the ribbing because I just wanted, I think it was about 1 centimetre more I added to the ribbing. And then I knitted the stripes correctly in the right order with the right amount of rows for each stripe. Then I was ready to graft. When I went on to graft, I noticed that actually the way you would normally do grafting, when I've done grafting before, so I've done this kind of sweater surgery before, but whenever I've done it before, I've just done it on straightforward stocking stitch. Usually I would do it where the rib meets the stocking stitch because it's less noticeable. But this time I've got this slip stitch sort of, which creates a sort of rib pattern. And so I realised that I needed to do it differently. So those stitches that I had up above the grafting line, I needed to, which I would be using to graft on, what I actually needed was to be holding both legs of each V of the rib, and then not actually picking up the purl stitches of the rib at all. And so I found when I changed it over to that and then grafted, so I tried it once, it didn't look right, redid it this way, and then I found that it worked a lot better. So you have got a line by doing the normal grafting. It mimics a line of stocking stitch, but that's fine on this because this has rows of plain knitting in it, so that works. If you're doing it in other places, then you might want to do it, as I say, at the bottom of a rib, or there may be a way to graft, there probably is a way to graft so that it mimics the rib, but I haven't learnt it yet, and every day is a school day with knitting, isn't it? So one day I will get my head around that. There will be many of you that may not have ever done sweater surgery, and that it sounds quite scary to cut your knitting, and in particular to graft it back together again. And there are a couple of places that I would recommend that help me. When I very first started doing it, which is quite a while ago now, I watched a video from where Andrea from Fruity Knitting guided you through doing it. So I'd recommend going back to that. It's an old episode. I'll pop it up on here and in the notes so that you can look it up if that's something that you want to look to. And then very recently, just this week, I noticed that Patty Lyons was doing a visual explanation of how grafting works. And that's quite useful actually, because so I know that when you're grafting, you're mimicking a knit row with your V's, but there was always this bit of me, that understanding didn't quite go with the fact that you're knitting on and purling off, or in what order you do it in, so it didn't feel quite intuitive. So she has this visual explanation of it, which is really helpful. So that's also worth having a look, and I'll pop that in the notes as well. So graft is successful, and the change of the stripes so that they're in the right order looks wonderful. It's now the same order as the sleeves, and it's just as it should be. So really pleased with doing that result. That extra work, it did actually take me about 5 days, but that extra work in my opinion was so worth it. So with the sweater surgery complete, I then moved on to picking up the stitches around the neck of the cardigan. A lot of stitches to pick up. I picked up at the ratio of 3 out of 4 stitches running up, and then I did a 1x1 rib, which the same rib as we've got along the bottom and on the sleeves. Then I made buttonholes following Patty Lyons' suggestion for buttonholes from her book, and I then cast off when I got to the right depth. I then cast off using Italian bind off. A lot of stitches for casting off an Italian bind off. I think it probably took me a day to do it, but I think because of the way this edging and where it is here, I think it's so visible that it makes a big difference, doing it, having that nice rolled edge there. So that's looking really lovely. There are two things now I need to do. When I did the blocking, somehow this sleeve, and you may be able to see there's a bit too much fabric on the sleeve. It's too long. This one's not so bad, but this one is particularly too long. So I think it's somehow got a bit stretched out when I was blocking it. So I'm actually going to give it a reblock and just see if I can bring it in a little bit. Overall, I'm really pleased with it. I feel it's a jumper that is going to be easy to wear in my wardrobe. It could go on over a dress, it could go over a blouse, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to work really well. While we're on the subject of sweater surgery, as we were, and I said that the last time that I had quite a number of things sitting in my knitting baskets just down here, and I was they would look like they were overflowing, and when I looked, I'd forgotten that I still had this, and this is the Greenwich sweater by Martin Storey. It's a Rowan pattern. I have knitted mine in Rowan's Baby Merino Silk, which is a yarn that's not available anymore, and I knitted this for my daughter. And when she put it on, and I knitted it last year and gave it to her just after Christmas, so very much this time last year, and when she put it on, it was a little bit too short at the front. So it's one of those interesting jumpers where you've got that longer piece at the back to the front, and this bit was actually shorter. So, and it just sat at the wrong point on her tummy. So I have done some sweater surgery on here as well, and I have cut it across here and then knitted some extra rib and grafted it back on. And I'll just show you a little bit of a video of me cutting it. In order to make the lines of the ribbing line up with the lines of the half fisherman's rib, I had to pick up both legs of each V on the half fisherman's rib for when I was grafting. They were the stitches I needed to use for grafting in order to make it line up. If you just pick up the first leg of each V, you end up with the rib at the bottom slightly offside to it. So that was something that I found out. So anyway, so that is another jumper that has been improved with a little bit of sweater surgery and has gone effectively from a jumper that wasn't particularly wearable or wasn't going to get worn because it didn't sit in quite the right way, to one that will hopefully get worn. Right, so moving on. And we have another blue jumper. Isn't it funny how you go through phases of certain colours? So now we are on the Lanark jumper, and I have finished both the sleeves. So the main jumper is now knitted, and I have to now knit the facing. So we've got the V-neck here, and it's going to be a zipper neck. So you put in facings here, and then you put the zip in between, and I will show you how I did that on the next video. Truth be told, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve. Not done one before, but as I say, every day is a school day in knitting. So I'm going to do that. The sleeves have been cast off using the Italian bind off, as I've done before. I'm actually starting to find it's almost in my head. I think the only problem is that I can get the Italian bind off is for a 1x1 rib confused with grafting for stocking stitch, where you're working on each next stitch, whereas with the rib you're hopping over stitches. But it's definitely starting to sink in, definitely starting to get in there. So that is the Lanark sweater. Now that it's complete, I tried on the Lanark sweater yesterday, the day before, and actually it's a really good fit on the top, but the torso is a bit on the tight side. I do think that this yarn is going to respond well. It's 100% Shetland wool. I think it's going to respond well to blocking, and I think I'm going to get away with just slightly eking it out a little bit on the lower part of the torso, just enough so that it's not sitting quite so snug. We will see, but that is the plan with that, or we will see how that goes. But I think it will. If that doesn't work, then we'll just eke it out all the way across a little bit. Maybe we could get away with doing that. So it's such a nice squidgy yarn. Love the squidginess of it. I do love this pattern. Rebecca Clow is knitting one in navy and white. I saw the other day, the striped, which looks really good. I've actually got a sweater very much that looks like that, but that looks very nice. So then we move on to my field sweater, and that is still plodding along. I'm knitting it in the John Arbon Knit by Numbers. Don't think I've mentioned that recently. So, which is a double knit. It's a very nice yarn. Enjoying knitting with that. And this is where we've got to. Rogue cable needle. So let me just hold that up for you, and you can see the work. It is really beautiful, isn't it? Yes, I'm really, really enjoying it, really enjoying seeing it build up as I'm doing the pattern. You can see that I've got markers in to separate each. So each of these lines, of course, is a different pattern repeat. So this is to separate the pattern repeats, which means that I'm only having to think about the sections of the pattern repeat rather than the greater pattern. It's something that I do a lot. I also do that if I'm working on colour work, where you've got a small pattern repeat as part of a big pattern. It can be really helpful and make memorising the pattern a lot easier. There's nothing to really memorise. The only thing you're memorising with this pattern is the pattern repeat for that row, because every row is different. And so I'm having to have a marker. So it's one of those sort of sticky markers that you might use as a page marker. And I move that down each row as I'm working on it, so I know where I am. They warn you on the pattern to make sure you have some way of marking it, because you would really lose yourself. It's very hard to work out where you are on it. So it is a lot of work. I'm trying to do an hour each afternoon. Obviously, some afternoons there are things going on that's just not happening. And so that's why it's building quite slowly. But we are almost at the end, I think, of that yoke work. And then I think we'll be moving on to stocking stitch and splitting for the sleeves. It's really lovely. I'm really enjoying knitting it. It's a bit of a challenge, but watching it evolve is just fantastic. So I'm trying not to be too impatient. And obviously it's going to move like many sweaters do, it's going to move on to a much more straightforward knit once I get beyond that. And I really enjoyed that kind of knitting, the real having something that was a bit of a challenge, and then when you get beyond that, it just being a bit of a breeze. So moving on, you'll remember that I had a number of sleeping works in progress, and I got those all out for you and showed you. And I am working at the moment from those. I committed that I was going to keep one as part of my active working whips. And so the one that I'm working on at the moment is the Skylark by Martin Storey, and you can see it is coming along beautifully. It's got a back, and then this is the front that you're looking at that's completed. I love the cable work down on the bottom of that, and then this little twisted rib detail that you've got coming up on the front band. And I have joined the shoulders using 3-needle bind off, which is not what's in the pattern. So you do short row shaping for the shoulders. So rather than cast off the stitches, you just stop knitting those stitches that it's asking you to cast off, and end the row with a German short row stitch. I have found I did start off doing wrap and turns originally when I started doing short row shaping, but I find the results for German short row shaping much better. The only thing I will say is if you make one on a purl side and then go to the knit side, and I think it's vice versa as well, you just need to be careful when you're knitting your German short row stitch together, that you're knitting it the right way. So rather than maybe knitting it together, you might want to go through the back loop to knit it to make sure that it sits correctly, because what you don't want is that stitch sitting like this and then throwing off the look of your shoulders. So that is that section, and I have now cast on the other front. I've knitted the border, which is the bit again needs a little bit more work, although it's not nearly as complicated as the field sweater. And then what you do is you've got stocking stitch on this side, and then you've got that twisted rib band that runs all the way around it, so it's built into it. So that's nice. I'm going to pick up stitches and add that on at the end. It's already there, so I think that's going to be lovely. And I like the way it's got that nice, it's got quite a bit of depth to it, it's not mean, it's got quite a bit of depth to it. And then what's going to happen with that, so where it's got to the top, you can see I've got it on a stitch holder there on the other front. It then will run all the way around the back, so I'll just be knitting on those stitches, and then I will then slip stitch it into the back. So my last work in progress is the Cargill Cowl by Rebecca Clow, knitted with the with Rowan Island blend and a mohair. I'll put the name of that in my notes. It's one that I picked up from Stitches and Cream, and this is how it's coming on. It's really beautiful, isn't it? The stitch work is a dipped stitch. So strictly speaking, it's being knitted that way, of course. It's a dip stitch pattern, and it's really pretty, and it's relatively easy to memorize once you've done a few bits. So it's a nice thing to have. I was knitting that on the train the other day when I was come back to Cornwall. I have decided it's time to start to frog my sleeping whips, those ones that I knew I just didn't have the desire to pick back up. So a viewer suggested getting on with this as soon as possible as a way of starting to make a dent in that work in progress pile. I have unwound this large project, this red cotton project, and then 2 smaller projects, and this has taken my sleeping whips pile from a huge bag down to a quite containable little box in my shelves. And now all I need to do is get and wind up this wall. Last time I spoke to you about a number of acquisitions that I've made, and one of those acquisitions was this sock sets, the Muzzle Lights sock set from Camel Yarns, and I wasn't sure. I just bought it because I loved it, and I wasn't sure what I was going to knit with it. And one lovely viewer suggested a pattern called the Passerine hat, which is a beautiful hat. I'll put a photo of that up there for you, and that could work. I like that. That could work. I had also just come across a pattern called the Alaska hat, and that is a very similar idea actually, so I thought it was quite interesting how our minds were working there, but it's got the silhouettes of trees instead of the silhouettes of birds. So there's two ideas there, and I do think that maybe that idea of the silhouettes is a good idea. So I'm going to have a look at the gauge and have a think about where we're going to go on. So that's a possible cast on. I'm conscious that with Lanark nearly finished, just needing to do those facings for the Lanark, finish the Daft Days cardigan, that I can permit myself to start something else. And then what else have I want to swatch for the Fern and Feather that I talked about last week to get that started, because hopefully it will knit up quite quickly, because it's a worsted weight, but I want to be getting it knitted so that I can wear it before it starts to get too warm. And I have also showed you last time this lovely merino double knit from Camel Yarns, and this little dyed colourful skein, and that I was going to do an Andrea Mowry pattern, the Shift Cowl, but she's just brought out a new cowl pattern, so I am actually going to go back and have a look at that and decide whether I think that I might prefer to do that one, because looking at it, I think I'd possibly prefer the look of it, but whether it would work as well with these two different yarns, I'm not sure. So that's what I'm going to look in on that, and I will tell you more about that. But yeah, and it's, I'll be honest with you, I think it's going to depend on what mood I feel in as to which one I'm going to cast on. I'd rather like that, not having a definite plan. There are so many things in life that I have planned, that are planned out, whether we like it or not. And it's quite nice with the knitting to not be too planned. So, yeah. I bought, talking about discipline, a knitting journal. I picked this up from Etsy, and it's got a page for projects, and your photos, and so it's got another page. Oh yes, and then your ideas and your thoughts. So lots of room to put stuff in. I haven't actually counted how many projects I get in there, but it's over 20. So I think that would be really good. You'd probably manage to do pretty much a year's worth there, wouldn't you? And then at the back, it's got yarn wish lists and suppliers, needle conversion, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's lovely, and it wasn't expensive. Could have got it personalised. I chose not to, but I could have done. I spent a couple of hours one afternoon last week writing stuff up on Ravelry, and I will put my Ravelry handle there. I think I did mention it earlier in the video, didn't I? So but yeah, so if there's anything that you want to go, at the moment it's mostly the Daft Days cardigan that's on there, with just a smaller amount of information on a few other patterns, but I'm going to keep adding to that Instagram account. You'll see that. I'll pop that up there for you, and if you want to sort of see the buttons that I get for this cardigan, what I do cast on next, what the zip looks like on the Lanark, and things like that, then I'll keep you updated on my Instagram. On to non-knitting stuff. So we are just coming up to a weekend, and so it's beautifully sunny today. As I mentioned to you, it's not forecast to be sunny over the weekend. Why does this happen? So my daughter's getting the train and coming over from Falmouth today to spend the weekend with us, and both my husband and I have been unwell over the last couple of weeks. He was unwell when I was last filming. I came down with it shortly after my last podcast. And I can still feel that tickle in my throat. So I hope that's not coming across on the video, but had to go and get drinks of water and things while I do filming. But, this is the first weekend where we felt fit enough to get out together and properly walk and do things together. And the weather is not playing ball. So we'll see what we get done. But I will, at the end of this episode, add in some footage from whatever we manage to do. I don't think it's going to be that glorious sunny weather that I'm looking out on today. Anyway, we've got to make the most of it while we've got it. So I am going to get out this afternoon, go into St Ives, and enjoy walking around there. I'm sure I'll find a sunny spot that I can sit down, maybe do a bit of knitting, have a spot of lunch. That just leaves me to sign off here and say thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. If you have and you haven't already, please subscribe. That would be lovely. Lovely to help support to grow my channel. If you've got any comments, as always, please send them over to me. I always respond. I love reading your comments. And I'm so grateful to you for supporting me and letting me know how much you enjoy watching the videos. So take care, enjoy your knitting, and we'll catch up with you soon. See you next time. Bye-bye.